I was a fool to believe live, laugh, love could conquer the crushing weight of this regret that now suffocates every breath. They said, good vibes only, but all I feel is the echoing silence of my own misjudgment, a constant reminder of how utterly foolish I was. I chased happiness is a choice, yet the only choice I seem to have made was the wrong one, leaving me drowning in the consequences of my foolishness. The mantra was, you only live once, and I lived it so foolishly, so carelessly, that the repercussions now feel like an eternal sentence. I bought into everything happens for a reason. But what could possibly be the reason for such profound and self-inflicted foolishness? They preached, trust the process, but the process I trusted led me down a path paved with my own naive and foolish decisions. I embraced, be the change you want to see, and the change I unwittingly created is this unbearable landscape of my own foolish making. The world chanted, believe in yourself, and I believed in my own flawed judgment so completely, so foolishly, that I'm now picking up the shattered pieces. I thought the best is yet to come, but all I see stretching before me is the long shadow cast by my past foolishness. They promised it is what it is, but accepting this reality, this stark consequence of my foolish actions, feels like a cruel and unusual punishment. I operated under the delusion of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But this foolishness has left me feeling irrevocably broken, not stronger. I once thought tomorrow is a new day, but each new dawn only brings a fresh wave of the realization of how deeply foolish I truly was. They advised, let it go, but the weight of this foolishness clings to me, an invisible anchor dragging me down into the depths of despair. I foolishly believed the universe has your back, while all along I was the one sabotaging myself with my own flawed choices. They encouraged, find your tribe, but the isolation of this profound foolishness makes me feel like an outcast, utterly alone in my regret. I was a fool to think time heals all wounds, because this particular wound, the one inflicted by my own foolish hand, seems to fester with each passing moment. They whispered, follow your heart, but my heart, it seems, led me down the garden path of utter foolishness and devastating consequences. I embrace the idea that you are enough, but right now, all I feel is the crushing weight of not having been enough, of having been so incredibly foolish. They said never give up, but the sheer magnitude of my foolishness makes the prospect of recovery feel utterly hopeless. I foolishly assumed actions speak louder than words, and my actions have now screamed the truth of my folly for all to hear, especially myself. They championed, lived in the moment, but the moments I now relive are the ones where my foolishness was most glaring, most unforgivable. I was a fool to think everything will be okay, because the reality of my situation, born from my own foolish decisions, is far from okay. They preached, be authentic, and the most authentic feeling I have right now is the bitter taste of my own foolishness. I believed the journey is the destination, but this journey, paved with my foolish mistakes, has led me to a destination I never wanted to reach. They encouraged spread love, but the only thing I seem to be spreading is the fallout from my own foolish and loveless choices. I was a fool to think the truth will set you free, because the truth of my foolishness has only imprisoned me in a cage of regret. They said, be grateful for what you have, but all I can focus on is what I've lost, what I've squandered through my own foolishness. I foolishly thought opportunity knocks but once, and I not only missed the opportunity, but actively slammed the door in its face with my foolish actions. They advised, learn from your mistakes, but the sheer scale of my foolishness feels too vast, too overwhelming to ever truly learn from. I embraced the idea that you are the author of your own story, and the chapter I've written through my foolishness is a tragedy I can't bear to reread. I was a fool to believe what goes around comes around, because the negativity that's now circling me feels like a direct consequence of my own past foolishness. They said, find your passion, but my current passion seems to be replaying the moments of my foolishness in an endless loop. I foolishly thought silence is golden, but the silence now is deafening with the unspoken accusations of my own foolish heart. They preached, comparison is the thief of joy, but I can't help but compare my current reality to what could have been had I not been so foolish. I believed where there's a will, there's a way, but my will feels broken, shattered by the weight of my own foolishness, leaving no clear path forward. I was a fool to think home is where the heart is, because my heart is now a landscape of regret, making any place feel like a desolate wasteland of my own foolish creation. They said, dance like nobody's watching, and I acted with such reckless abandon, such foolish disregard for the consequences, that now everyone is watching the fallout. I foolishly assumed laughter is the best medicine, but no amount of laughter can cure the deep ache of realizing how utterly foolish I have been. They advised, "Look on the bright side." But all I see are the dark clouds gathering as a direct result of my own foolish actions. I embraced the idea that every cloud has a silver lining, but the cloud of my foolishness seems so thick, so impenetrable, that no light can break through. I was a fool to believe the pen is mightier than the sword, because the wounds inflicted by my own foolish decisions feel far sharper and more lasting than any blade. They said, "Knowledge is power," but all the knowledge I possess now is the painful understanding of my own monumental foolishness. I foolishly thought birds of a feather flock together, and now I find myself surrounded by the consequences of aligning myself with my own foolish impulses. They preached, "Absence makes the heart grow fonder," but the absence of what could have been, due to my foolishness, only makes the regret grow stronger. I believed a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and my first step, it seems, was a foolish stumble in the wrong direction. I was a fool to think still waters run deep, because the depths of my current despair are a direct reflection of the foolishly shallow thinking that led me here. They said, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." But I foolishly meddled, I foolishly interfered, and now everything is irrevocably broken. I foolishly assumed practice makes perfect, but no amount of replaying my foolish actions can ever make them right. They advised, patience is a virtue, but the waiting for the consequences of my foolishness to fully unfold feels like an unbearable torment. I embraced the idea that two heads are better than one, but I stubbornly relied on my own foolish judgment, ignoring any other perspective. I was a fool to believe strike while the iron is hot, because I struck blindly, foolishly, without considering the damage I would cause. They said, "Out of sight, out of mind." But the memory of my foolishness is a constant, inescapable presence in my thoughts. I foolishly thought, where there's smoke, there's fire. But I ignored the warning signs, the little wisps of doubt, until the full blaze of my foolishness engulfed me. They preached, "Look before you leap," but I leaped headfirst into this situation, blinded by my own foolish assumptions. I believed honesty is the best policy, but I wasn't honest with myself, and my foolish self-deception has led to this painful reckoning. I was a fool to think the grass is always greener on the other side, because now I'm stuck on the other side, realizing the lushness I left behind due to my foolishness. They said, Don't count your chickens before they hatch. And I foolishly celebrated prematurely, only to have my hopes dashed by my own ineptitude. I foolishly assumed what you see is what you get, but I failed to see the underlying complexities, the hidden dangers due to my own foolish naivete. They advised, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but I recklessly invested everything in a foolish endeavor that has now left me with nothing. I was a fool to believe this too shall pass, because the weight of this realization, the crushing understanding of my own foolishness, feels like a burden I will carry forever. I was a fool to think, if you build it, they will come, because I built something based on a foolish premise, and now I stand alone amidst the ruins of my own making. They said, the early bird gets the worm, but my early efforts were misguided, fueled by a foolish understanding of the situation, leaving me with nothing but regret. I foolishly thought a penny saved is a penny earned, but all the pennies I meticulously saved were ultimately wasted on the consequences of my larger foolish decisions. They preached, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. But the lemons life handed me were a direct result of my own sour choices, my own foolish actions. I believed, where there's a will, there's a way, but my will is now overshadowed by the overwhelming awareness of my past foolishness, blocking any clear path forward. I was a fool to think, look before you leap, because even when I thought I was looking, my judgment was clouded by my own foolish biases. They said, practice makes perfect, but no amount of hindsight can undo the imperfections born from my initial foolish mistakes. I foolishly assumed slow and steady wins the race, but my slow and steady approach was based on a fundamentally flawed and foolish understanding of the race itself.